I've had a lot of requests for good books to read regarding cryptocurrency. Now, I've delayed making this video because it's hard. I can't pick one book, two books. So I've got like 15 here. Let me say a couple things first. When it comes to just, if you want to learn how, cryptocurrency really works, there might be better places to go, specific Medium articles and things to read on the internet. Or remember, learn by doing. If you want to learn how Uniswap application on Ethereum works, my suggestion is get the MetaMask wallet, go to the Uniswap app, use it, do it. Learn by doing is if you want to get into the mechanics. Reading books, though, I think is super important if you want to be an investor. If you want to be a good investor, you have to understand how the world works, how everything relates to each other, and you need a much wider view than just understanding the mechanics of one application or one platform. So a lot of my recommendations, you may look at them, aren't about crypto specifically. It might be the history of money or history of economics, or you'll see as I go through. So another point I want to make is always, I stress, depth over breadth. In other words, it is more valuable to really understand one book deeply than to quickly skim through 5 books. So, when I read a book, and I remember in school when I was younger, they told me I was a slow reader. So I'm about to show you, 15 books that I read slowly. And maybe there's somebody out there that has the ability to read all those books much faster than me. But did they? Did they read those books? It's about doing it and understanding it and retaining the information. That's where the value is, not in getting through a lot of stuff. So take it slow, and I'll tell you, if you enjoy a book, I love having a book that I enjoy. So why rush through it? If there's a word I don't know, I'm in Kindle, I look up the definition. If there's a concept I haven't heard of before, I go to Wikipedia and read about it. So get into it, enjoy. Okay, so let's go through the books. Cryptoassets by Chris Berninski. This is a little old, 2017, but still, and I haven't read it obviously since then, but I still think it's a good book that gives you a good understanding, at least, from the way we looked at things in 2017. There's really nothing in here about DeFi, but I think it's a great book to have read and to read. So I put it in here. Like I said, a little old, but I remember I thought it was great. This book, The History of Cryptography. Now, again, I think this was written before even, Bitcoin was invented. But you learn about how public key and private key were invented. It gives you a good understanding of the history of sort of the cryptography leading up to Bitcoin. And I don't know. I think again, gives you a big picture, and it was an interesting book. I enjoyed it a lot. I thought this was a great book. I think if you want to be a crypto investor, this is a good one to read. The Starfish and the Spider talks about, leaderless organizations, really talks about decentralization. In other words, this book, again, also written before Bitcoin was invented. But I think it gives you a good understanding of decentralization, decentralized networks, decentralized systems. And I think it's important to understand, in a lot of my videos, I talk about, I'm not going to invest in that because it's not decentralized. And a lot of people are like, why is he so into decentralization? This book will give you, you should have an understanding of that. And again, kind of a fun book. The Bitcoin Standard. So this is sort of the Bitcoin maximalist Bible. Toward the end, and again, this was 2018, but I think it was 2017. I feel like it was written. Maybe it was 2018, but Safadine is, so this book is a little cuckoo. I think the history of money in this book is great. I learned a lot from the book in general, mostly about the history of money, and there's a lot about the narrative of Bitcoin being digital gold, the value of hard money. But keep in mind, Safadine is he's a little extreme. His claims about Keynes, being a child molester, it's a little, I don't know. Some of these things are a little conspiracy theory-ish. And then when he talks about Ethereum, he thinks Ethereum is a scam. It's a little, watch out for some of that. But it's a great book. By the way, I'm really into trying to breathe. I'm into Wim Hof, the Iceman, and I'm gonna go take a plunge later. If you notice me, I'm breathing. I notice when I make videos, I don't breathe enough. I'm trying to make sure that I'm breathing properly now as I make my videos, and it's a little awkward right now. If it looks like I'm gasping for air, I apologize, but hopefully I'll get used to it and learn to speak and breathe properly. Anyways, Silk Roads. This is really the history of international trade, you might say. What does it say here? A history of international trade. Fascinating book. Now, this is one that you just, enjoy it. I mean, it took me months to read this thing. And I shed a tear when I was done. I mean, but I think it's important to learn these things. If the thing about investing in crypto, you're investing in financial systems. So it is important to understand all the financial systems that exist today, that have existed in our recent past and in our ancient past. And this is a fabulous book. Bitcoin Billionaires. History of Bitcoin. A lot of fun. This book is an easy read, very entertaining. This is the guy who wrote, what was the movie about Facebook? Social, I can't remember. But this is a fun, easy book to read. A good history of Bitcoin. I enjoyed a lot. By the way, all of these books I've read, there are other books I didn't even put on this list that I read that I looked at and I was like, I can't remember if I loved it or not. I don't even know, so I didn't put them on the list. And I'm sure there's a lot of great books I haven't read. So, and if you know of a great book yourself and you put it in the comments below, we'll check it out. Okay. Last Man Standing. The Ascent of Jamie Dimon and JPMorgan. This, I thought, was a great book. First of all, JPMorgan is the leading bank in America. And I'm looking at, JPMorgan has been surprisingly in tune and all in on Ethereum. I think it's not in the media, it's not in the press, but they seem pretty surprisingly smart. And before reading this book, I thought Jamie Dimon is just another asshole banker guy who just borrows money and does reckless shit and gets bailed out. But he's actually a pretty smart guy. I gained some respect from him from this book. And it helps you understand where JPMorgan is in the world. And in fact, I got another book there's another book coming about JPMorgan, the history of JPMorgan. It's a fabulous book as well, but we'll get to that. Americana, 400-year history of American capitalism. This book is just, again, fabulous for if you want a real understanding of the history of American economics, the economic machine of America and how it started. And it just a lot of, I learned a lot about, I complain a lot about how the government is meddling and everything these days. They have a long history of meddling, and it's not, I don't know. Again, this book I think was just great and also very enjoyable. I'm going to put links to all these books in the description in case you can't see the name of it or whatever in my description here. The Battle of Bretton Woods. You know, the how do you describe? You know, the world goes through different monetary systems, different reserve currencies over centuries. And the Bretton Woods system is we're sort of in the Bretton Woods system all still today. And it's sort of the Bretton Woods system as it was set up. You know, this book is great to explain to you what that system was and how it came about. It was really interesting to learn how dominant the U.S. was in just sort of making the dollar be the reserve currency. This book, I remember, I didn't totally finish it, but I got far enough that I learned a lot. And now we've moved to this petrodollar system. And by the way, I tweeted yesterday on Twitter about this article written by Lynn Alden, I believe. What a great article about the history of the dollar system since Bretton Woods, by the way. Maybe I'll show you that. Because it's so long, it's almost like a book. The fraying of the U.S. global currency reserve system. I mean, what a great article. Look at how long this thing is, okay? Just, you know. Okay. This is not to sit to read while you're in line at Whole Foods. All right? Look at, and I'm only halfway through. So that it's almost like a book. And so, again, if you think Bitcoin or Ethereum is going to replace the dollar, well, you better understand what the dollar is. And so you better understand Bretton Woods and the petrodollar system and how all of that works. Money changes everything. This is really the history of money, and it starts from writing, from Mesopotamia, Athens, Rome, history of money going far back. And really, again, this was, I remember it being a fabulous book, loved it. Tower of Basel. This, what do you call it? The Bank of International Settlements, I believe it's called, is the central bank for the central banks. And, again, great to understand this book. This reminds me of a book that's not on my list. I forgot to put it in, I guess, was the, what is it called? The Jekyll, how do you say, oh my God, Jekyll Island. The Creature from Jekyll Island. Okay, this book, okay, watch out. A lot of conspiracy theories. The author, I mean, some of I remember the last chapter, he thinks cancer is a conspiracy. I mean, don't quote me on that. I don't remember. But it just, some of this book is it's interesting to learn how our current central bank system was created. Talks about how our current central bank is the third United States attempt at a central bank. And the history of central bank is really interesting. Now, he tries to turn every step into this evil conspiracy that everybody had bad intentions, which you can sort of gloss over, and I don't buy into a lot of that. But if you just want to learn about how the financial system works. In fact, I mean, I majored in economics at University of Michigan. And they never taught me how the system works. That, it starts with, you've got the central bank and the government, and the central bank creates reserve notes, gives that to the government in exchange for treasury bonds, and the treasury bonds the Federal Reserve Central Bank takes and then those are used as the base layer trustless asset of the system. Like, and maybe you don't even understand what I'm talking about. This book goes into detail. It's great for that. Just watch out for the conspiracy theories. I mean, this guy goes off the rails sometimes. So if you get caught up in conspiracy theories, I almost fear this book could be dangerous for you. Like, I'm very good. I can spot, like, I can smell fake news. You know, it's like I'm good at that. So be careful. Where were we? Scale. Universal laws of life, growth, and death in organisms, cities, and companies. I found this to be fascinating. Now, this book, you know, some of these books, too, will be, I don't know, maybe not the most fun. I don't remember if this one was per se, or I'm thinking of another one. But the point of the matter is here, so why did I like this? It talks about networks, sort of how, you know how a company tends to die relatively quickly. Some may live, but even 100 years is difficult. Whereas cities can live for centuries. And why is that? And it talks about sort of networks and network systems and how they live. And it gave me insight into how, like we see in crypto, the worst shitcoins never die. It's sort of like shitty cities never die, too. You know, you see cities that are just, it's the worst city, but it still lives, as opposed to a company. Once a company sort of isn't great, it's like, fucking goes under. This book gives you insight on why that is. Fascinating. Okay, The House of Morgan. Another long book. I mean, this thing's got to be like 700 pages. But the history of JPMorgan, I loved, too, you know, starting, I think JPMorgan started in the 1800s. You get a good sense of the history of banking, and I loved the things. They were just things I remember about how, you know, I remember they gave details of all the booms and busts through the decades. I remember there was one, you know, this bubble proved that an impending crash, you know, people used to think and still say, you know, if you know a crash, if everybody says a crash is coming, it's not coming. They mentioned there was this one, and everybody knew once this happens, I can't even remember the event, but once this happens, it's going to crash. And then that happened, and everything crashed, you know, and this was like in the 1800s. And also the Great Depression. This book had a take on it that I've never heard anywhere else about how the market. I'm not even going to get into details on it, but the details on, you know, it's like almost like day by day from when the market crashed in 29, and then it was coming back, but then they outlawed. You know, they created all these tariffs, which made all the European banks go bankrupt. And it was interesting that of why we had this long depression. It wasn't like because of the stock market crash. It was one of the things I got out of it. And there was so much I got out of this book. Again, I didn't finish it. I think I got to the 1950s. Maybe I should actually go back and finish, or you know. And again, I love this. Reading slow is great because I never go back and read a book twice, which I probably should. This is one I probably would do me well to read again, but I sort of, I'm always like, well, I already read it and whatever. So enjoy. I mean, you're going to be busy if you read all these books, believe me. Elon Musk, I think this is an important book because he is, you know, right now, I gotta say, he's probably the smartest guy on the planet. I think when we look back in time, it's like you know, someday in the future we'll look back like a Thomas Edison, you know, or Benjamin Franklin, you know, just these individuals who changed the world. This guy is one of them, and this gives a great history on, you know, the book's only 2015, but up to that point, understanding how Elon Musk works, and a great read. And this is what got me into Tesla. Hey, you know, 2015, I started accumulating a little early, and, you know, boy, I've made so much money in this stupid Tesla. Which, by the way, my video about allocation, my next video, I got some interesting changes coming. One of them is reducing how much Tesla I'm holding right now. The price is crazy, but listen, I held this thing for 5 years and had no fears, as it didn't move at all for 5 years because I understand what Elon's doing and what Tesla is doing and where it's going. And so, I think it's important to understand him in general. Let's say one of the leading entrepreneurs. I wish there was a book like this about Jeff Bezos, right? Bezos. I would read that as well. Even though, for crypto, it helps. And like I said, just a reminder, if you really want to, be in crypto, you can't just read and go to conferences and watch videos. You have to get your hands dirty. You have to do the work of figuring out how to put in the wallet and how to upload and how to keep track of your shit in a spreadsheet and get organized and have backups in case something gets lost and what if you die, like all of that sort of busy and hard work. You have to do that stuff, the busy work, you know what I mean? Don't forget about learn by doing. But reading is important. Let's get back to the business here. The richest man who ever lived. I think this was around the 14 or 1500s. And this was fascinating to me because you really learned how the economy worked back in those times. And one thing I found interesting that I still remember was, we have this battle against always, monopoly versus free market. Do these there'll be a monopoly, it has a lot of power, but they're producing a lot. Like people talk about this with Amazon. Well, do they have too much power? We should break them up. Or Google, too much power, we should break them up. But on the other hand, they're doing great things. I mean, Google's got this deep mind that they've invested in and is producing cool things. And they do it. And Amazon does, I love Amazon. But people get afraid. So this battle, though, was same type of battle, but different companies going on in the 14 and 1500s. Help me put all that in perspective. This book, and I love reading about, the world again, centuries ago and how people were dealing with financial issues. So this was a great book. Snowball. This is Warren Buffett. History of Warren Buffett. This is another one. And for those of you who are like, Warren Buffett, he's old school. He doesn't like Bitcoin, He's, he buys shitty food companies and fucking oil. I don't like him. But hey, has been the best investor in recent history. Of the existing, if you think the old system is going to be replaced with a new system, as I do, well, you got to understand the old system if you want to understand that transition. And, part of that is understanding who was the king of that old system and how did it work. And also as a great investor, one of the things I remember from reading that was surprised me, how many times I was reading and Warren Buffett took a big position in this company. And then the price kept going down and went down for a year and a half, down, down, down. And he kept buying and it kept going down. And then 3 years later started going, and it just how he wasn't picking bottoms. He didn't buy at the bottom and that's how he's rich. He bought when it was good. And most things just seem like a lot of times he bought something and then it went down a lot. And so I liked hearing that. Gave me some comfort when that happens to me. As it happens to us all. The Prize. Epic quest for oil. This is the history of oil in detail. Another, 600-page book. But I loved it. Very interesting. I learned a lot. I mean, it's interesting how, we think of oil as, well, I don't know how you think of it as, but I grew up, I remember in the 70s, and there was the oil shock, and price of oil was so high, and I just always thought of oil in my mind as this thing that's there's not enough, and the price can go high. But really, the history of oil is this thing there's always an oversupply problem, it seems, more of the time than this restrictive supply issue. And after reading this book, I said, great, I understand the oil industry and the history of, why we had all the, I don't know if I want to explain it all, but why we have all this oil going on in the Middle East. Believe it or not, that was a strategic decision by the U.S. to say, well, what if we run out of oil here? So we should make it somewhere else. So the U.S., for self-defense, created this whole Middle East mess, believe it or not. Fascinating story. Very important to understand this if you want to understand, and now we're on the petrodollar system. I don't know if this gets into petrodollar per se, but, our oil has been an important part in the dollar hegemony, if that's how you pronounce it. The dollar as the U.S. reserve currency, Saudi Arabia pricing their oil in dollars for everybody, was an important part of that, is an important part of the system. So, understanding the history of oil is fascinating and great for investing in general. And after reading this, though, I said, I'm never buying any oil companies. That's one thing I know. And again, I own Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway. He loves the stupid oil. I'll let him do it. Okay. Two more. The man who solved the market, Jim Simons, the quant revolution. Quant traders, these algorithmic traders. Algorithmic trading has been huge in the legacy markets, is also going to be big and is big, computer trading in a sense. In crypto, this Jim Simons is the king of the algorithmic trading. And again, another fascinating book. Helps you understand Wall Street too. And I talked about this one. So that is all. There certainly are more books and more things you can read. The most important thing when you're studying, if you're gonna go off on your own and read things other than these books, always look at the number of ratings. Not that a lot of ratings means it's quality, but that's something to look at. A lot of positive ratings. But the other is, read respected. I always say, only listen to experts. Is this a respected book? And if you're reading something, just a Medium article, who wrote the article? Someone emails you an article from the newspaper, it says blah, blah, who wrote the article? Only listen to expert. But reading quality, respected, well-researched books is a great way to gain knowledge. And also, with books, I try, first of all, I do read on Kindle. I like Kindle. You can get the blue light filter and turn the lights down on it when you're reading at night. But I like it. It's easier to handle, easier on my eyes. You can make the print bigger. You can click and go to Wikipedia and dictionary. You can make notes that are easy to access. So I love Kindle. And what was I going to say? Shoot, I had another point there. Oh, we're talking about investing. Remember, one of the best investments, especially if you're young, well, maybe at any age, invest in yourself. Invest in yourself. That means reading books. But the first step to reading a book is buying the book. $16 for this. Geez. Should I buy it? Am I going to read it? $16? You know what? Think about how much you throw into a shitcoin. Think about when you go out on a Friday night, how much you spend. You probably spend, 5 books for one night out. Skip one night out and just buy 5 books. Just fucking do it. I buy books. I buy first and decide if I'm going to read it later a lot of times. Now, maybe I have more money than you, but still, this is not, if you look at this, buying books, look at it as an investment, not as consumption. And even if you don't read it, look at the big picture. If you buy 5 books and you read one of them thoroughly, you've spent, 16, this is actually expensive. How much are all these? This one's 10, 13, 24, 14. I don't know. Let's say you buy 10 books and it costs you, well, I guess that's $150. But if you read one of them all the way through, you don't think that's going to improve your investing by more than $150? Knowing when to buy and sell. Like, I have so many things in my life that I just reduce to, it doesn't matter. What matters is on what day I sell some of my Ethereum, if I ever sell it. Or when I get out of some Tesla, right? That's what matters. And that's based on me being smart. And that all comes from me reading. So $150 so that I'm a better investor is money well spent. And that's assuming you buy 10 and only read one. If you go from this list, I bet you're going to read more. And really what it comes down to is putting in the time. Don't worry about going fast. And like I said, and just make the time. Put it on your things to do list. Have a pattern. Every day at lunch you read, or every night before bed, or whatever it is. Make that routine. Become smart. Or knowledgeable, I like saying. All right, thank you. Let me know your thoughts. If you know of any other great books, you put them in the comments. I'm going to put all these links below the video. And now I'm going to head to the ocean, where it's friggin' like 40 degrees. Do a good 4 minutes in there. Do my deep breathing, yoga. I'm like way into it. Because I got this thing. I got my Aura Ring and my Garmin Connect tracking my heart rate all day. Want to be relaxed, and then when I sleep at night, this is my obsession, and I'll spare you a video on that for now, until I become an expert and I'm constantly relaxed and sleeping like a baby, breathing well. Then I'll make a video on how I did it. Thank you.